In this video, I am only replacing the brake pads on the rear of a 2013 Elantra. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is remove the tire. One thing I did to get this up on jack stands is I drove it up on my ramps, and then once it was elevated, I then used the jack to get it a little higher and put it on my jack stands. It's a quick way to get your vehicle up on jack stands when you're dealing with low profile vehicles. Then what I do next is I make sure I got some chock blocks in the front tires, because I'm going to release the emergency brake, because I want that released as I'm working on the brakes back there. Now I'm going to remove two bolts that are holding the caliper in place to the caliper bracket using a 14 millimeter to remove these two bolts. Then I'll just remove the caliper. This isn't too heavy. Sometimes I will take a zip tie and hold the caliper up to the coil springs, but this can support itself. And then so what you see in here, the caliper piston right there, I don't know if it matters, but I try to remember where it is. See that groove right there? That groove's gonna hook into a little notch on the back of the brake pad, and you gotta make sure those are lined up in the right spot when you put it back. These brake pads, the inner one, you can see it's worn very bad. My daughter didn't tell me about it till
dang teenage girls.
Later. She said there was some sound, and I was like, great. And usually that means that they've waited too long. Maybe I should check their brakes more often for them. This pad right here isn't too bad. It's still got a little bit of thickness on it, but that interior one, that one is really bad. This pad is worn off everything all the way down to metal, which means it could potentially start damaging the rotor as well. So see the back of this brake pad right here, I was telling you about that little notch. So when you put it back on, that notch is going to slide right into one of those slots right there. So we just got to remember that as you replace the new pad, to make sure that you line it up to where those notches line up. Here's a look at the new one versus the old one. You can see how much is worn off between these two. Yeah, these should have been changed a long time ago. Now I'll go in and get some brake cleaner and just kind of clean this whole thing off before I put on the new pads. Clean off all that rust. Put that retainer clip back in as it fell off when I was removing the brake pad. You don't have to do this, but you can take a little brake grease and put it on either end of the pads as you put them in place. This allows them to slide freely when they retract when the brake pedal is released. Then just slide the brake pads in place. It's easy to tell which is which. Just remember that sensor clip that sticks out is on the bottom portion, and it goes along and aligns with the shape of your disc. So it seems like it doesn't fit, and you grab the wrong one, because they come in a set for both sides in the box. Then I like to spray a little more brake cleaner on there, just kind of clean some of that grease off the side so I don't have too much of it. Now in order to put the caliper on, we're going to have to compress back in the piston. And this is different than your normal front brakes, where you can just get a C-clamp and compress that back in. You have to spin that clockwise. And so there's special tools you can buy for this, but you can use a pair of pliers to twist it as well. And so what I like to do is I like to get it back in the same position. I'm not sure if it matters, so I'll mark where the position was, so as I begin to spin it all the way down, I'll stop in the original position where it was when I began. You can either use some needle nose pliers or some channel scripts, anything big enough to get around that and start to spin it clockwise.
DJ, spin that piston!
It goes all the way down.
Now he's pretty fast at that. I don't care who you are.
Now I have it all the way down, compressed enough, back in the original position, and I can then slide it in place and make sure that I've got it on that groove, that little notch right there, and get the piston lined up right with that notch as I slide it back in place. Have to kind of lean in here and look at it closely. It's kind of hard to see as I line this up to get it perfectly lined up before I put the bolts back in place. And from there it's rather easy. You just need to tighten the bolts back on and you'll be good to go. And then after that, get somebody to get in the vehicle for you, pump the brakes so you can bleed the brakes. If you don't know how to bleed the brakes, just look up online. Maybe I should have made a video to show you how to bleed the brakes. It's not that hard. You just gotta get someone to pump the brakes, and you do the release valve to get the air out of the brake lines. And then that's pretty much it. You just need to put the wheels back on and you're good to go.